Today I'd like to talk about the various meters you see on the screen, starting with the RISC gauge, which is the red gauge that you see just under the life bar. This gauge will start at 50% and will go up as you block attacks. And as you can see, over time, it slowly falls back down to 50. As you get hit, the gauge starts to fall very quickly, and then when the combo ends, it resets back to 50 if it is below 50. So what does this meter do? It is essentially this game's guard meter and its combo damage scaling meter combined into one. Combos in this game can get exceptionally long, so what they did to balance it was they made it so that each successive hit in the combo does progressively less and less damage. For example, my kick normally does 12 damage, but if I combo them together, you see it went 12 to 10 to 9 to 8, so each hit in the combo does less and less damage. This effect compounds with each hit, until eventually now my kicks are only doing 3 damage. So that's essentially what the RISC gauge is doing. The higher the RISC gauge, the more damage you take. However, each hit in the combo reduces the RISC gauge, so the lower the RISC gauge gets, the less damage you take. This means that if you have a higher RISC gauge, you take more damage from the combo. Additionally, if the gauge gets over 75% from the blocking, and it starts to flash, during this flashing, any hit you take becomes a guaranteed counter hit, even if they're in a combo. The thing about this gauge is you can block forever and not take a single point of damage. However, if you get hit once, it's going to hurt really bad. While we're talking about scaling, I should mention that there is also a hitstun scaling. So notice that string of attacks actually connects during the first part of a combo. However, over time, it'll stop working. And the game does several things that accomplish the same sort of task here. One is the hitstun deterioration. 2 is pushback increase. So as time goes on, you'll be pushed further and further away from them with each hit. And also gravity scaling. The opponent will fall toward the ground faster. All of these are dependent on how long the combo is in terms of duration, not in terms of how many hits you've done. Just briefly, I want to talk about the health bar, which is the green bar at the top. And if you take damage, it turns yellow. Every character in this game has the same amount of HP. However, they do not have the same amount of defense. So even though this combo did 72 damage to a normal Abba, it will do significantly less damage to a Potemkin and significantly more damage to a Chip. So in other words, Chip has a high defense modifier because he takes increased damage from attacks. And Potemkin has a low defense modifier, so he takes less damage from attacks. Likewise, there is a scaling or a guts system to damage taken, which is to say the lower your health gets, the less damage you take. So this kick does 12 damage up here. Now it's doing 11. Now it's doing 9. Now it's doing 7, 6, 4, and dead. The next meter is the tension meter, which you can see right here. It says tension. This meter starts at 0 at the beginning of each round and increases very slowly as you attack the opponent in any way. This includes walking forward, running forward, air dashing forward, jumping forward. Any aggressive action you take on the opponent will build you tension. This obviously includes attacking them. Over time, it'll start at blue. Then when it hits 25%, it turns green. Then when it hits 50%, it turns red. Then when it hits 75%, it turns purple. And when it hits 100%, it turns golden. I want you to notice the 2 meters here, the one on the left side and the one on the right side. Notice the speed at which they move. The one on the left is pulsing much, much slower than the one on the right. So in addition to giving you tension, playing aggressively also increases this little pulse. We call it tension pulse, and the higher this pulse, the more tension you gain in general. So at the start of the round, you'll both have the same tension pulse, but if I play defensively and backdash a lot, you'll see that my pulse slows down. If your tension pulse gets extremely low, it'll start to say danger, and if you don't play aggressively very soon, you'll acquire the negative penalty, which drains you of all of your meter instantly and reduces your tension pulse to extremely low values for 10 seconds. So not only does it take away all of your current meter, it also makes it so that you can't build additional meter for a while. Moral of the story is don't backdash 10 times in a row. There are several uses for tension, and whenever you use any of those actions, you'll have reduced tension buildup for a couple of seconds after using it. So now what are these uses for tension? Well, the most basic option that you can use tension on is the Faultless Defense. To perform Faultless Defense, block and then hold down any 2 attack buttons. This does not include the dust button because that makes you burst, and this does not include the specific combination of S plus H because that lets you slash back. Other than those combinations, you can use any combination you want. I always tend to Faultless Defense with kick plus slash. I just realized my inputs weren't showing, so here's that input. There you go. So as you can see, Faultless Defense slowly consumes your tension over time. However, it changes your blocking to be a little different. Firstly, it removes all chip damage that you take. Secondly, it removes all risk damage that you take from all attacks. So you can see she's taking neither HP damage nor risk damage. And thirdly, it makes you get pushed away further, which can make your opponent's attacks miss. However, it also increases the block stun animation when you block, so things that would be punishable might not be punishable anymore. So Faultless Defense is great, but you might not want to use it if the opponent does a really slow punishable attack, because it pushes them away and increases your block stun, making it very difficult to actually get the punish. However, if your goal is to get the opponent away from you and not take chip damage and not take risk damage, then Faultless Defense is great. You can Faultless Defense while in the air. This has the same properties as ground FD, except it additionally lets you block attacks that are otherwise air unblockable. For example, this attack is air unblockable. However, I can block it if I FD. This makes air Faultless Defense a great defensive option because there's nothing that the opponent can really do to hit you except for air throw. You don't have to worry about chip damage, you don't have to worry about air unblockables, you don't have to worry about highs and lows, you just have to worry about your meter. It's because of this that your tension drain is increased dramatically when you do the air Faultless Defense. Sort of the opposite of FD is the instant block, or IB. To do this, simply block but time it so that you press back or down back right before their attacks connect with you. This does the opposite of Faultless Defense. So it gives you tension and increases your tension pulse. It reduces block stun and shortens pushback and makes you flash blue and white instead of green. So in the same example as previously, it is great for punishing attacks and finding holes in the opponent's pressure. Instant blocking is sort of an intermediate tactic that you can throw in occasionally. For example, if the opponent is doing strings and you can't find an escape, they just keep pressuring you, then maybe instant blocking can help you out. And then the ultimate version of instant blocking is the Slashback, which is performed the same as Faultless Defense, except you have to use the combination S plus H, like that. Unlike Faultless Defense, you cannot hold this one down forever. You can only tap it, and you'll blink yellow. While you're blinking, parry any attack that comes your way. This does not include unblockables or throws. So what is Slashback? Well, first of all, it consumes a little bit of meter each time you use it. But if you successfully parry an attack, you actually build that meter back and more. And similar to instant block, it reduces block stun and pushback, but it actually removes them completely. So it's essentially a super duper version of instant block. However, after you use Slashback, you cannot block. Watch, I'm going to try to FD after Slashback. It doesn't work. Which means it is strictly better than instant blocking, but it's much, much riskier. This is an advanced mechanic that you don't need to use at all. You can go a very, very long distance in your Guilty Gear career and never press Slashback a single time. You can set the dummy to use any of these blocking techniques from the training menu. Normal is regular block, Just is the instant block, Faultless is the Faultless Defense, and Slashback is Slashback. Also in the pause menu, in the command list, these yellow attacks are your force break attacks. It'll spend 25% tension to perform the force break attack. Just below your force breaks are the Overdrives in green. Overdrives are essentially super moves. Some of them are installs, and these cost 50% tension. Next, while blocking, you can perform a dead angle attack by pressing forward +2 buttons. This will consume 50% tension to attack the opponent and knock them away. Not all dead angles are created equally. Some can be blocked and punished, some are slower than others, some have terrible hitboxes, but the startup of the dead angle is completely invincible, so even if the opponent does several attacks quickly, it'll blow right through them and get them off of you. And finally, we have come to Roman cancels. Romantic. To perform a Roman cancel, do any attack that hits the opponent on hit or block, and then press any 3 attack buttons that isn't dust. So you can do PKS, you could do KSH, you could do PSH, it doesn't matter. This consumes 50% tension, just like your Overdrives, and will cancel out of the animation you're doing completely. This is a very fluid mechanic that has infinite uses. You could do an unsafe move and keep it safe on block. You could land a hit and convert it into a longer combo. You could use an attack with long block stun and use it to get in. The number of uses are infinite, but keep in mind, this does not work if your attack misses. If your attack misses, you are left wide open and you cannot Roman cancel. There is a second type of Roman cancel called a Force Roman Cancel, or FRC, and these blink blue instead of red. To perform an FRC is extremely specific to your character. All it is performing a Roman cancel, but during a specific window during specific attacks. So, for example, this attack has an FRC window if you time it right as the second attack connects. The advantages of FRCs are twofold. One, it only costs 25% meter instead of 50% meter. And secondly, they are possible on whiff, in addition to hit and block. In training mode, if you go to the pause menu and set display to input or both, you will see your input display down here, and whenever you do a move that has an FRC point, you'll notice it blinks blue. It blinks blue at the exact timing that you need to press the RC in order to get an FRC. So play around with your moves, see which ones have FRCs. That one has an FRC, that one has an FRC, that one has an FRC, and practice them and see which ones you think are most useful to you. I would rate this mechanic as an intermediate mechanic that you should only practice once you've mastered the basics of Guilty Gear. There are some FRCs which are extremely integral to a character's game plan and you have to learn them. The last meter on your screen is the burst meter, which says burst up there. Keep in mind that if your burst meter does not look the same as mine, you are not playing on the correct version of the game. Be sure to check the previous video to learn how to switch your versions. This meter starts full and you consume it by bursting. You perform a burst with any combination of 2 buttons that includes the dust button. So you can do these 2 buttons, these 2 buttons, these 2 buttons, or these 2 buttons. All combinations work. So what does bursting do? The thing that makes burst unique is that you can always burst as long as you are not attacking. So, if I'm standing still, I can burst. If I'm in the air, I can burst. If my opponent is attacking me and I block, I can burst. If my opponent is attacking me and hitting me, I can burst. This little hop upward is completely invincible to strikes. However, it can be air thrown. And then the rest of the properties of the burst are going to depend on which type of burst you use. So if you burst normally, it's a gold burst. But if you burst while the opponent is attacking you, it is a blue burst. If you gold burst, you are strike invincible as you fall to the ground. However, you are still vulnerable to air throws. If you perform a blue burst, you are not strike invincible as you fall to the ground, and the opponent can punish you. And if you land a gold burst, watch my tension, it gets filled to full. Even if you have 0 tension, if your opponent does not block your gold burst, you get full tension. One thing to note is that the burst meter usually refreshes back down to 30% after you burst. However, in this specific scenario in which you do a blue burst and the opponent does not get hit by the blue burst, it'll actually drain all the way to 0, which means it takes longer for it to fill. Keep in mind there are some animations that'll put an X over top of your burst meter, and in these situations you are not able to burst. So these include throws, these include supers, or any hit that causes a special animation. You cannot burst during those. So at the end of rounds, you will often see people do combos from throws into supers, just to make sure that the opponent can't escape. And finally, there is no way to combo into your gold burst. So even if I hit you and immediately burst, there's no way. Even if you stay in range, the burst will just go right through your body. And that's it. That's it for the whole video. Oh wait, there was something else in the command list? Let's see. Here are your dead angles. You have your overdrives. Oh my, what is this? This is your instant kill. If this hits the opponent, you win the entire round. So the way this works is on a timer. You press all 4 of the basic attack buttons to enter instant kill mode. This turns your tension bar into a timer. If you do this on accident, press the same buttons again and you will exit that mode, but you will always exit with 0 tension. The duration of instant kill mode depends on how much tension you have. So if I have full tension, I get the full timer. If I have 50% tension, I'll start with half the timer remaining. At any point during instant kill mode, you can perform this input, quarter H, to perform your instant kill. However, performing your instant kill, if it hits, you win the round. But if it whiffs or is blocked, then you lose your tension gauge for the remainder of the round, which means that you do not have access to Faultless Defense, guard cancels, any force breaks, any overdrives. Nothing that uses tension is available to you for the rest of that round. There are legitimate uses for instant kills, especially when your opponent is ABBA, but for the most part you don't see them very often in high-level play. And that's actually the end of the video. Next video, I'll be going over more advanced strategies, mechanics, and even some glitches. I hope you learned something from this video, but until next time, see you later.